Welcome to Sacred Harmony, a space where inner stillness meets lived truth, where healing unfolds through resonance, reflection, and the quiet courage to listen within. I'm your host, Anya, and today's episode is an invitation to soften the noise and lean into a deeper rhythm of being. We are exploring the disalignment of unconscious habit, those invisible threads woven through our days, shaping our choice, reaction, and sense of self without our full awareness. These patterns once served us, protected us, helped us survive. But what happens when survival strategies outlive their purpose? When the very habits that once kept us safe now keep us small? This isn't about discipline or willpower. It's not about breaking it's not about breaking bad habits through force or shame. This is about the sacred, tender work of recognizing what we have been carrying and gently, consciously choosing to set it down. Our guest is Dr. Christian Orange, a transformational speaker, mentor, and best-selling author whose work is rooted in lived experience. His journey spans early trauma, decades of depression, addiction, solitude, and profound inner inquiry, using himself as a laboratory at the intersection of psychology and spirituality. From that, long dive emerged insight, compassion, and practical wisdom for those who long to unravel what binds them and live with authenticity, freedom, and grace. Named Spiritual Wellness Leader of the Year 2025, Dr. Christian works primarily with those who have achieved outward success yet feel internally constrained, particularly soul seeking women who sense there's a truer way to live but haven't found the path back to themselves. In the spirit of sacred harmony, this conversation invites presence, light, listening beyond words, noticing what resonates in your body, and letting truth find its tone. Welcome to the show, Dr. Christian. It's such an honor to have you.
Thank you very much, Anya, and it is a very pleasure to be here as well. Yes. So there are,
So let's
yeah. I just wanted to make a comment on what you just said, and there are two words that are standing out for me. It's this word, stillness, and in one of my keynote speeches, I started like this: Why is silence so powerful? Because in it you can hear words of truth. So that's the first word, the stillness, the silence that stood out and I wanted to mention. And it relates to the other word, and that is basically the title of the podcast, this word sacred, which I find very much related into the silence because I can also say that in silence, the space I find myself in is often perceived and felt and actually is sacred. And it's therefore such a privilege to be here on the podcast because of these two elements you bring into it, and that sets the stage for our conversation. And that leads me actually to the following, and that is what I so often hear, that it is mentioned that no one of us is broken, no one needs fixing, and we are already whole and complete, and it's just a matter of being, just be. And I actually have a different view on it, and which I would like to present to your listeners. And that is, on one hand, I totally 100% agree with the notion and the idea, and basically what I consider to be the truth, that we are already whole and complete right now, right here, in essence. It is, at the same time, not the entire truth, as I see it. We live in a world of paradoxes. contradictions, which in this case means that yes, we are already whole, we are already complete, we are already actually the one we want to be right now, right here. And at the same time, and that's the paradox, there is still some work to do. Now, in to relate to the remark of us not being broken, in essence, no. However, in our human existence, there's very much so something that you can call broken, a broken heart. We can have been broken in our trust. We can physically be broken. I mean, when you ride on the bike to buy a bread at a bakery and you take the curve and there's a garbage truck hitting you over and you lie on the ground and your bone is sticking out of your leg. It's a bit strange to say, you know what, you're already whole and complete and just be. In that particular case, it is really important to acknowledge that there is something at that moment broken physically in this metaphor in this case, but it also on an emotional or mental or even on a spiritual level. We can we can be broken. In essence, no, but on a human level and in experience, yes. And the acknowledgement of it actually is opens a pathway to true transformation and healing, as I see it. And then the fixing part. That's a very interesting way of saying it, and it becomes way more clear why this is not such a good idea when we more clearly define what fixing actually implies and what it does and what we actually try to accomplish. Again, the way I have come to understand it and the way I see that it works is that fixing is in a way trying to get rid of something we don't want. When you use the metaphor of the oyster, at some point, the oyster felt that life had blown a worthless grain of sand in his belly. Fixing would be that the oyster would have the opportunity to spit out the grain of sand and, in that sense, create a relief for itself and goes on with whatever oysters do. However, the disadvantage of fixing in the way of getting rid of something deprives, in this case again, the oyster of eventually coming out of the whole process of transformation and healing with a beautiful and precious pearl. So instead of fixing in the terms of getting rid of what we do not want nor like anymore, the things that are bothersome, particularly the ones that are very, very painful to bear, the invitation is to stay with it, to be with it, to investigate and to do the things that help that particular thing to transform in something beautiful and valuable like the pearl. And it is it is an invitation that I would like to extend, and that is to um, consider and to play with this idea of holding two states at the same time. The state of being whole and complete already on one hand, and at the same time acknowledging the pain, the hurt, and then doing whatever needs to happen to transform and heal it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And you described habits as comfort that can quietly become cages. That's such a tender paradox. How does something that once protected us eventually restrict us? And why is that shift so hard to recognize?
It's maybe not that hard to recognize because, in my experience, it is very felt. It's very much. the disturbance and the pain and the sadness and all the things that comes with it, that is very, very a big part of our experience. The thing here is, I think, not knowing yet how to deal it in such a way that a beautiful pearl can be the result of it. Now, you're very right in asking me to explore, well, how is it possible that certain habits that once served us well turn out to be something that, in there's another way I describe it, that can take us hostage, and we can come to a point where we feel that we've become imprisoned by those very habits that served us well, and have now turned into unconscious habits. And I say often and write it also unconscious slash habits. And I use that slash in between those words consciously. And maybe in this interview, I can say a bit more about that. But let's first turn into how is it possible that the habits that we are cultivating at some point are not useful anymore. And that is, for that, to answer that and to make that clear, we first have to become clear of how habits are formed. In my case, I had a troublesome birth. Before, during, and after birth, I counted it recently, 12 unexpected, very uh, impactful, negative, call it traumatic events. And what happens in those moments where we are challenged by those kind of circumstances, which basically are life-threatening, in that moment instantly, there are certain beliefs that are seated within ourselves. Secondly, the emotional charge is so overwhelming that we need to store it and push it into our sub and unconscious in order to be able to be available and have all our resources to cope with the situation, meaning to make sure that we stay alive. And then the third thing is that we create from those particular beliefs and the experiences and the emotional impact it has, we create almost instantaneously in that moment a habit. Well, to be more precise, we analyze the situation, we perceive it, we analyze it based on how we perceive the situation, we come up with what could help us to survive. We come up, so we make a conclusion. We come up with with a strategy that might help, and when it feels and sounds plausible, we make the decision to carry it out. And when it indeed leads to the survival, we keep it in mind and we keep it in store for other situations where something similar happens. And when it does, we pull out the same kind of strategy and we do it more and more often. And at a certain point, we are convinced that this is helpful. We give it the stamp of approval and we raise its standard and status to call it a habit. Now, the next thing is that is happening, that in itself a habit is 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 useful um, in the sense that we store that habit in our subconscious. And why I say it is useful, think about how you have learned to drive a car or how you have learned to write. At first, it's you have to think about so many things, and it is not going easy, and you have to practice, practice, practice. But through the practice, it becomes something that the subconscious absorbs, and then it becomes the habit that you hold within yourself in such a way that now you can step into the car, drive off, and enjoy the ride without having to learn it anew every time you step in again. So having a habit and having it stored in our subconscious is in itself a wonderful feature. The thing is about storing habits in our subconscious is that the more we practice it and more we apply it and more we use it, at some point it goes on autopilot. And that is what basically makes us drive a car without having to think about it. We just do it. So in itself, it's also a great feature that is added. But when we speak about habits that are not that beneficial, then having it on autopilot will give us the feeling that we have not no control over it. It feels like that they have the control and they have the power and they make us do things we don't want or whatever. And then we speak, for instance, about situations that someone is addicted to some substance or to certain behaviors or whatever. Now, the answer why habits turn into a negative is simply actually because of the fact that those habits have been developed, are stemming from situations that we really, really needed it. But from that particular moment, we started to live our life. We experienced things, we got certain knowledge, we trained certain skills, and overall, in becoming the adult we are now, we are much more capable of dealing with situations that we were not capable of dealing with when we were at a much younger age. Which means that the habits over time start to get outdated and useless. In keep applying them on the situation that now has completely changed, we are, as I said, we have evolved, we have learned, and we are now very much capable of doing certain things for ourselves which we could not do when we were younger. The reason why we stick to actually still applying those what have become unconscious slash habits is because these habits, we've carried them with us for so long. It has given us so much. We hope and pray that it will still give us much. And still, when it doesn't, it is the familiarity. It is the sense of safety. It's the sense of holding the support that we get from it that makes us do these and hold on to these habits and allow them to do whatever they do. There's also another part to it, and that is what happens when we start to consider making the changes we actually already know we need to make. We already start to feel in our body, we already sense in the situation we are in, with the person we are in relationship, this is something, this is getting worse, it's getting more painful, it is kind of escalating, it's more fights and more illness or discomfort and disease imbalances and you name it. So the situation or people or physical conditions can drive us, push us, force us at times even to a point that we say, you know what, enough is enough, and I really, really need to change this because this is not end up very well if this continues like this. Still, having that awareness, still having that knowledge to actually start doing it has to do with this one word. The more severe the situations are, the more necessary it becomes to not only do a little bit of practice, to only not do a certain kind of healing session or whatever you have done in the past. What in that particular situation is needed is to embark upon and engage in a process of deep transformation and healing. And that's word alone. And I can imagine that maybe there are listeners who are hearing me say these words, deep transformational healing process, or immediately sparks fear, resistance, alarm goes off, wow, 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 because of ignorance, basically. Two things happening in that moment when you hear me say these words. It's either the fear of, well, when I am going to travel to the more depths and deeper layers within myself, which deep transformation implies, what is it then what I find there. Are Will I be able to cope with it? And even probably already filling in the blanks that probably I will be so overwhelmed and so wiped out that I stop existing, for instance, in worst case scenarios. But that is the kind of deeper fear that is rooted in that kind of belief. The other thing that happens considering deep transformational processes is, well, if I go and engage in such a process, who will I become? It's a step into the unknown. And then filling in all kind of negative consequences, what might happen, or actually already thinking in terms of that will happen when you engage in such a process. So yeah, it's quite a complex and very delicate matter we are now touching on, and which actually requires a very specific and precise approach, which I've learned through what I've encountered myself, taking myself as the laboratory to experience and find out what actually works for me, and then finding out also that then after I given it my approval and noticed the benefits for myself, then offering it to my clients and then also see that my clients are benefit from it. And yes, what works, why change it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that compassion feels essential, honoring the protection while choosing freedom. It's not war with ourselves, it's a dialogue.
Mhm. Absolutely, yes. And you mentioned it, and that's crucial. The moment I have a conversation with someone who reaches out and has expressed the desire to work with me, two things are important. First is to address the fear and resistance to go in on to step into such a deep transformational process, and it all comes down to pointing out the great importance of starting with creating the proper circumstances and conditions for them to do this deep transformational work in a safe and secure way. That's the first thing. Secondly, deep transformational work implies moments that can feel very disoriented, very disabilitating. And in order to make sure that the person I'm working with comes out of the other end all right, which is my responsibility, and I not take that lightly, another thing needs to happen. And that is, imagine you are on a ship, your own ship. You are the ship and you are on it. And you are going through stormy weather. You are swiped from left to right, up, down, and not knowing actually where you're going and if it's where you're going really going to happen and if it's all working, and you wonder, why did I embark on such a journey? The thing that is necessary to pull you through is to have something on the shore which is called a lighthouse. Now, in the real sense of daily life, going through the motion, what I'm referring to as that point of reference is you to re-establish a more direct and conscious connection with your what is called your essence, your true self, your true nature, your soul slash your higher self. Now, talking about this slash, um, maybe let me add one more remark about why I put the slash between conscious and habits. I pull them apart because of this. The habits are situated in our subconscious. And we are very often told, me included, how important it is to work on your subconscious, to change your beliefs, to work on your habits, and so on and so forth. But very recently, because I noticed in myself that it was actually not working, on very deep level, it really didn't it made any difference. There was a deeper part in myself that felt I even myself could not be touched. And that brought me to this idea from, we are created with a conscious, a subconscious, and an unconscious. And then I started to dive into it and explore the unconscious realm. And what I found in there is what I call the root causes of all our suffering, which works as the core drivers that spark, fuel, and activate those habits, which makes us do or say or not do or not say what we later regret. So habits are situated in the subconscious. In the unconscious, it holds the root causes and the core driver that sparks them. If we only focus on changing the habits, it doesn't work because when the root cause is left in place and untouched, it is the root cause itself that pulls the habit over time, slowly, slowly, slowly back into place again. And we find ourselves back at square one. And then actually having the notion of, oh, I've done all this work, but it actually didn't seem to make any difference. And it actually did make any difference because the root cause is still in place.
Mm-hmm. 100%. Okay. So, Dr. Christian, can you please guide people how to get in touch with you?
Sure. Yes, my pleasure. For anyone listening who feels that something of what I've shared resonated, I love to offer you all a little gift. It's a short downloadable ebook called The 5 Steps to Transform Any Negative Feeling or Thought, Anytime, Anywhere, in 7 minutes or less. I created it because for many years in my own life, I carried emotions, negative emotions and thoughts far longer than needed, simply because no one ever showed me that I could transform them much quicker, even when needed instantly in the moment. Now, the advantage of doing this little ritual I have put together is that it prevents you from suppressing of what you don't like to feel or think. Instead, to turn them into feelings and thoughts that energize, empower, and uplift you. You'll find the link in the show notes. It's a simple download, and you receive it by email. In addition, for those of you who have it all, yet still feel unfulfilled and sense the desire to take a deeper step and to free yourself from that what is burdening you, for you, I'm also offering a complimentary From Pointless to Purpose Treasure Map consultation. It's a 1 hour conversation where you can experience how I work. You can ask me questions directly and explore whether I'm the right person to assist you in making the changes that may set you free. Just to be clear, this is a no pressure consultation. There's no obligation. It's simply an invitation to explore.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
You too, Anya. Real pleasure to have been here with you in this interview and, yeah, giving me the space to share my knowledge with your listeners. It is, again, a real pleasure and an honor to have been here. And for the new year, I wish you in particular that everything that is going to happen will contribute to your highest sense of wellness, wholeness, and well being, Anya.
And listeners, as you move through the rest of your day, here's a sacred invitation. Notice one moment when you react automatically, a familiar emotional response, a knee jerk behavior, a pattern you have repeated 1,000 times. Pause. Place one hand on your heart, one on your belly. Breathe slowly and ask yourself, is this response truly mine, or is it an old habit responding for me? No judgment, no fixing, just witnessing, just recognition. That gentle awareness, that's where disalignment begins. And if this episode resonates, share it with someone who may be living on autopilot, who longs for a deeper alignment but doesn't yet know how to begin. And if Sacred Harmony supports your inner listening and your journey towards conscious living, follow the show, leave a review, and help the space of resonance reach more open hearts. Harmony isn't perfection, it's the quiet agreement between who you have been and who you're becoming. It's the courage to see the patterns that shaped you and the grace to release what no longer serves you. It's liberation. Thank you for listening with presence, for honoring the sacred work of becoming conscious, and for choosing a life that rings true, thread by thread, habit by habit, breath by breath. I'm Anya, and this has been Sacred Harmony. May you meet your patterns with compassion, may you release what's ready to go, and may you discover the freedom that's always waiting just beneath the habit.